Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Welcome to Live Penguin TV. My name's Megan and I'm going to be your host tonight as we watch the world's smallest species of penguin, our little penguins, coming out of the water, crossing the beach and heading back to their burrows here on Phillip Island in Victoria, Australia. And tonight I'm joined by Stephen for the first time ever. Stephen, tell us what you're going to be doing tonight.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back. I'm going to be the producer tonight, which means I'm going to be reading all the Facebook questions and comments you guys leave. So please ask some incredibly interesting questions, incredibly difficult questions for Megan. We're going to do our best to try and stump her tonight.
Thanks, Stephen. Do your worst. I'll try my very best to answer your difficult questions. So send all of those questions through to Stephen. Hopefully we can figure them out between us. Send them through on Facebook and YouTube, and you'll see that we already have our first group of penguins crossing the beach. So they're a bit eager to get home tonight. We've already had 3 little penguins sneak past, but this is our first decent group coming across now. And they are a little bit earlier than we expected because we do have a really low tide tonight and it's still a little bit bright out. But they're in a rush to get home. And we're joining you from Phillip Island, also known as Milau here in Victoria. And this is the traditional lands of the Bunurong. So they were the first people here on Phillip Island, the first ones who would have seen these cute little penguins crossing the beach. And they've been coming here for thousands of years, caring for this country. So I would just like to acknowledge the Bunurong and their elders past, present and emerging as the traditional custodians of the land that we're joining you from tonight. And please let us know where you're joining us from, no matter where you are all around the world, whether it's the morning in the UK, you're watching here at night in Australia, you're in America, anywhere else around the world, Asia, where else? Let us know where you're joining from, and let us know who the traditional custodians of the land are that you're joining us from as well. There's plenty of penguins in that group. We are also joining you here from Phillip Island Nature Park. So the Penguin Parade where we are, the Summerland Peninsula, this entire penguin colony in this beautiful beach that we're watching tonight is all managed by Phillip Island Nature Parks, and we're a non-for-profit organisation caring for our environment and wildlife through education, research and conservation. So thank you for joining us to watch our beautiful little penguins, and you can come join us in person now if you'd like, as our restrictions are slowly easing here in Victoria, and we hope that the rest of the world will be able to come and join us soon here at the Penguin Parade, and also the rest of our sites around Phillip Island. We also manage the Koala Reserve, Churchill Island, the Nobby Centre, many of our beautiful beaches, wetlands and woodlands all around the island. So you're helping support us by watching our little penguins coming and visiting us, or you can donate to the Penguin Foundation to help look after these beautiful little birds who are almost the whole way across the beach now. And if anyone does want to give it a go being a part of our penguin research, try and count these little guys as they cross the sand here. Because we do have a low tide, there's lots of rocks at the moment. Our penguin counter tonight, Sally, will be counting these penguins probably at the last minute as they come across this little bit of sand where it will be easiest to see them. And they're not making it easy tonight, they're quite spread out. So give us your guesses as to how many you think's in the first group. And if you tuned in last night, you're probably wondering how many penguins crossed the beach last night. So I hope you've all got your guesses in. We like to have a little bit of a penguin lotto here amongst the rangers. So in your household, put in all your guesses, and whoever gets closest might get a prize or bragging rights. Stephen, do you have the number for how many we had last night?
Yeah, so last night we had a total of 674 penguins last night, which is a bit lower than we've been getting the last few weeks, but maybe expected this time of year.
674. So let us know if you guess close to that. As Stephen said, it's a little bit less than what we've been getting lately, because our penguins are starting to move out of their breeding season into their molting season, and it looks like we're getting many more penguins than we did last night already tonight. So this is a good sign. But while we're watching these guys, keep an eye out for any really big, chunky looking penguins. I think Stephen likes to call them certified chunkers. Is that right?
That's it, a certified chunker.
And they'll be those penguins getting ready to molt. So if you don't know what that means, it means they have to lose and replace their feathers. And these little penguins have very special feathers. So they spend about 80% of their lives out at sea looking for food, diving up and down over 1,000 times every day, trying to catch enough food to raise their chicks, and then they have to get ready to molt. They have to look after those feathers so that they can survive the winter, spending weeks or months out at sea to find food for themselves. So to do that, they have to lose and replace all of their feathers once every year. And it takes them about 2 to 3 weeks, so they can't eat for that whole time. So they have to more than double their body weight, so you will see some chunkers coming in. If some penguins look really skinny, it's probably just because they have already finished molting or they're still feeding chicks. So
yeah, and in our first group that crossed the beach tonight, we had 135 penguins.
Wow, 135 just in the first group. So I think we're on track to beat last night's.
Yeah, I think that chocolate bar is going to be mine tonight.
Yes, so Stephen always guesses the highest. So everyone makes their reasonable guesses based on the last few nights, and Stephen just goes probably 1,000 above that. So if we have an extra high penguin count night, and something's giving them a fright, Stephen was likely to win the chocolate, which is a cherry ripe tonight.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Is that a good one? But as you can see, the penguins are more than halfway across the beach, so they've gotten a bit of a fright, but they're not running back in the water. They're going back up across the rocks, and even though the tide's quite low, the rocks do give them a little bit of added protection. So they might be feeling nice and safe in the rocks, and they're going to keep going across the beach. And that's why Sally will be waiting probably till they get up to this sandy point here to count them, because that's when we're confident that they're probably not going to run back in the water. But it is the most dangerous, most scary part of the penguins' day, coming across the beach to head back to their burrows tonight. So they are quite nervous, looking around, making sure there's no predators out and about. And that's why they're waiting till it gets dark, waiting for any of those big birds of prey Pacific gulls, swamp harriers, sea eagles, any of those birds that might be able to eat a penguin, waiting for them to go to roost for the night, and now it's safest for the penguins to cross the beach. And they have some quite big groups coming in already, so it looks like they're feeling quite confident. Sometimes with a low tide, when they have a long way to walk, they're a little bit more scared, a bit more nervous. But in a nice big group there, they seem to be feeling quite safe tonight with all of those rocks to hide in as well.
Now, as our penguins have been crossing the beach, and you were talking about molters a little bit earlier on, one of our guests, one of our viewers had a really interesting question. They're wondering, can penguins get sunburnt while they're molting?
Oh, so that's a good question. I don't think they can get sunburnt. Oh, there's a wallaby. Hello. It's going to jump through our penguins, and they're actually not too bothered. No, so I think when penguins molt, their new feathers kind of push out the old feathers. So you don't often see their bare skin. Sometimes they might have a little bit of a patch where they've lost their top coat of feathers. So they have two layers. So they have the blue and white feathers, and then underneath that they have a soft downy set of feathers. So I don't think I've ever seen a penguin skin. Have you, Stephen?
Never seen a shaved penguin.
No, we certainly wouldn't shave the penguins. Or is it plucking?
Yeah.
I don't think we would pluck a penguin. Yeah, so their skin isn't exposed because you have the old feathers coming off, but the new feathers are pushing the old feathers out. So by the time the old feathers are gone, they should have the new feathers coming through. So I don't think a penguin would ever get sunburnt. They have those two nice layers to keep them safe from the sun, but they can get a little bit too hot, especially when they're molting, because like I said, they can be more than double their usual body weight. And I want to try and see if we can spot any of those chunkers coming across the rocks here. Let's have a closer look. And I don't want to be mean to the penguins. They're not fat. They are like little bodybuilders. They put on most of their weight in muscle, not fat. So they're working really hard, spending a couple of weeks out at sea fattening up. And then they have all that extra weight. Sometimes they're so fat they can barely walk. So keep your eyes out for those guys, maybe pulling themselves along on their bellies, using their flippers and their feet to help them make their way across. And then when they get back and they have the new feathers pushing out the old feathers, they have pretty much two layers of feathers. All their blood vessels at the surface of their skin are dilated. So they're really prone to getting too hot, to overheating. As you can imagine, if you're really big, you have two fur coats on and you're stuck on land. You can't go for a swim to cool down. Oh, there's some. Oh, I almost missed them on the highway. Hang on, let me swing around and see if I can catch them. Yeah, so if we have any hot days during the molting season, especially a few hot days in a row, a bit of a heat wave, that can be quite dangerous to our molting penguins. Not from sunburn, but just from that heat. And they might even come out of their burrows during the day if they're getting too hot. I know a couple of years ago we had a heat wave during the molting season, and as it started to get dark, instead of the first penguins we saw coming out of the water and crossing towards us, we started to see molting penguins coming down from their burrows, going down to the beach to go for a swim to cool down, which was... I'd never seen that before. You seen that before, Stephen?
No, not often anyways.
Yeah.
It's unusual to see penguins going the wrong way.
Yeah, definitely. And it was still quite bright. I don't think our penguin counter really knew which penguins were going which way or what was going on. But at least those penguins were able to cool themselves down, because unfortunately some penguins weren't able to survive from getting overheated. So we're doing our best to try and look after our penguins here, adding a bit more vegetation around some of those boxes that might be a bit exposed, giving them safe places to hide during their molt, to keep them not only safe from predators but nice and cool if it does get a bit hot as well. And it looks like we have a little chick down here. So not all of our penguins have finished breeding. It looks like... Oh, coming out of the bushes.
Wow.
So it looks like a bit of a fight, but I'm pretty sure that is a chick trying to get some food from a penguin who doesn't appear to be its parent.
We did have a question about chicks and about the molting season at the same time. People were wondering, do baby penguins, do they molt twice in a year? Once when they get the new feathers and again?
So they... Let me try and see this chick. Where did he go? when the chick is born, when they hatch from their egg, they have this black layer of feathers. And then as they get a little bit older, maybe 1 or 2 weeks old, they lose that black, those black feathers, they get their brown fluffy feathers. And then once they get up to about 6 weeks of age, they start to lose the brown fluff and get their blue and white feathers. And then when they're about 8 to 10 weeks old, ready to fledge, that's when they'll have all of their blue and white adult feathers. And then they won't molt until they come back onto land, which is... they'll come back onto land about a year after they fledge. So if they fledge, say, in November or December, they'll come back onto land, be like, oh yeah, this is as I remember it. They'll go back out to sea, and then they won't come back in until this time of year, around March, April to molt. So that's actually the longest period in its life a penguin will ever go without molting, is when they fledge to when they have their first molt, because it will be usually more than a year. These chicks that are fledging now, they'll probably molt about a year on, but the ones that fledge a little bit earlier, especially this year, because we had our first clutches of chicks fledge around, when was it, Stephen? Around November, probably?
Around then, yeah.
Yeah, those guys will be waiting, how many months is that? 12, about maybe 16 months or so before they're fledging, rather than that 12 months. So one of our research officers, Paula, was actually telling me that's, if you see a penguin with a lot of wear on its feathers, oh, there's a lot of penguins here, particularly they get a bit of wear around their flippers. That's the kind of spot that gets the most friction when they're swimming all day. That's the first place you see wear on their feathers. And if you see a penguin with really worn feathers, it's probably a penguin that hasn't molted for the first time yet, because they go that longer period without molting. I hope that answered the question.
That was a great answer.
So it looks like we've gotten some pretty good numbers, and I can't see any particularly chunky penguins just yet. But the chicks are quite funny to watch. I think that we're quite lucky when we have chicks and molting penguins on land at the same time, because it just gives you so much to see. And each time of year is different for our penguins. So we're lucky right now that we get to see those brown fluffy chicks coming out, running around, looking for mum and dad. And I might actually follow these penguins over to the burrows and see if there's any more chicks over this way, because I know there's been some little brown fluffy chicks over here. There we go, there's one. So there he is, just probably living in this burrow right here, right next to the penguin pathway, waiting for mum and dad. And of course this chick doesn't know what mum or dad looks like, so he's running up to every adult penguin that walks past saying, "Are you my mum and dad? Can I please have some food?" But only its own parents will feed it. So he's standing there waiting, I was going to say patiently, he's not so patient, for mum or dad to come home. But I think it's even funnier watching the chicks running up to adults when they're running up to those fat molting penguins. Oh, here comes some more on the highway. Because those molting penguins are just so grumpy. Because like I was saying, they're fat, they're probably really itchy, and they're hungry. So they're really grumpy. The last thing they want is a little chick running up to them asking for their hard-earned fish. Ooh, I've got a bit of a mist on the camera there, but there we go. There's little penguin butts waddling away from us, which I love watching. It's not an angle you often get for our little penguins. We're usually watching them from the front crossing the beach, so I love watching them kind of waddle away from us on the highway there. While we're watching their little butts waddle away, do we have any more questions, Stephen?
Yeah, so this one's one I don't think we've been asked before.
Oh, okay.
And a few people have been asking this one. So I think Emma was the first one to ask this question, and she was wondering, do we think penguins will ever expand to the northern hemisphere?
Oh,
I know.
that's an interesting one. So I do know that the Galapagos penguin does forage to the northern hemisphere, but I don't actually know if there's... I doubt that a penguin would be able to go much further along the equator. I mean, a Galapagos penguin, they do swim across the equator, so possibly they could just live over the equator, but most other penguins aren't going to go anywhere that hot. So our penguins here are the smallest because they have to live somewhere quite warm, as do the African penguins and some of the penguins in South Africa. Yeah, they're the African ones. South American penguins have to live in some warm environments, but most penguins will live in places that are cold. So I guess when you think of penguins, you're thinking of your emperor penguins, your king penguins, all those penguins that live in those cold places like Antarctica and the Southern Ocean, where they have to be a bit bigger to stay warm. So I guess, what do you think, Stephen? Could a penguin live in the Northern Hemisphere?
Well, I'm from Canada originally, and I can tell you they get easily outcompeted by a lot of the local wildlife there. And I don't mean like polar bears or anything like that, which would have completely different hunting tactics. I mean things like puffins, which look incredibly like a penguin, but they're able to fly up high on the cliff faces, travel greater distances with less energy. I think the competition would just be too much for the penguins.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. Definitely, there's other animals that have adapted to fill those niches in the Northern Hemisphere that the penguins have here in the Southern Hemisphere. So even if a penguin could get through all the heat and cross the equator and get up to the north where it's nice and cold, there you go, they probably wouldn't be able to survive and they wouldn't be adapted to those predators. So I know you probably see a lot of cartoons and pictures with penguins and polar bears in the same place, but in the wild it would never happen.
And we do know that the foxes here on Phillip Island used to be a major problem to our penguins, and we also have foxes in the Northern Hemisphere, and can't imagine they get along too well.
Yes, definitely. Our penguins here and in Antarctica, they have no native land-based predators, so they have no adaptations to avoid them. They're only adapted to avoiding those birds of prey that I was talking about earlier. So a penguin out on land at night, they feel safe. They're not worried about any predators, and that's why, as Stephen said, when we had foxes here, it decimated our penguin numbers. And in many places around Australia, one fox was killing up to 40 penguins every night. So fortunately for our penguins, we have had a fox eradication program here at Phillip Island through the nature parks to maintain our now fox-free status. So we've been fox-free for over 5 years now, which has allowed our little penguin numbers to flourish, and they have more than doubled in their numbers since the 80s when the eradication program and housing buyback, the penguin protection program all started. So now we have probably over 32,000 penguins now in our penguin colony here on the Summerland Peninsula. And that's something that we've been able to do with the funding that we get from our tourism here at Phillip Island Nature Parks and the donations from wonderful people who donate to the Penguin Foundation, where you can adopt a penguin, a seal, a bandicoot, all those wonderful animals that you might see if you come here to Phillip Island that are all benefiting greatly from our eradication of foxes. So you might see some short-tailed shearwaters this time of year still, and I want to keep my eye out for a bandicoot because I know we quite often see them on the live stream here, but you have to be really quick because you see them and then pretty much they're gone before you can get a good view. So keep an eye out for something that's about the same size as a rabbit but hops kind of like a wallaby with a long tail and stripes across its back, and that's our eastern barred bandicoots. If you haven't seen one before, keep your eyes peeled because they were actually classified as, there's Ranger Tom, they were actually classified as extinct in the wild on the Australian mainland, and we were lucky enough that when we eradicated foxes here on Phillip Island, we were able to introduce 67 of those eastern barred bandicoots here onto the Summerland Peninsula into where the penguin colony is. An already protected area for the penguins has now become a home for our eastern barred bandicoots, helping to save those guys from extinction. So 3 years they've been here. Is that right, Stephen?
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah, and now we estimate there's around 300 of these bandicoots that live here on the Summerland Peninsula, which is incredible. And I still get super excited every time I see one because they were almost extinct and now that they're still critically endangered. So to see one is still a really special thing, to see an animal in the wild.
It's never going to get old seeing those bandicoots.
I don't think so. It never gets old seeing the penguins, but seeing a bandicoot is something else. I know sometimes people come here who might not know what a bandicoot is, and they're just standing there watching the penguins, and I come up to them like, oh my god guys, look, there's a bandicoot, and they're like, what is this lady talking about? It looks like a rat. But I'm like, no, you have to understand what this animal is and how special it is that we have them here. And it's because we have this area that has been conserved for the penguins that we're now able to look after all of our other wonderful wildlife through the work that we do here at the nature parks. Let me have a look if there's any more penguins coming out of the water. It's getting a bit dark now, so they might be a little bit hard to see, especially through the rocks. Oh, but I can see some little white bellies, so there's still penguins coming through. But now it's getting a little bit later, a bit darker. I think they're a little bit more spread out. It's kind of, oh no, there's a group there. It's kind of the dribs and drabs of penguins coming in now. Most of the main groups come in within that first 20 to 30 minutes or so, but we will keep counting the penguins for 50 minutes, so almost an hour they get counted for after that first group crosses. So that first group of 3, they didn't start the official penguin count. They should have brought 2 more friends with them, because we do need 5 penguins to start the penguin count. And we've been counting them that way since about 1968. A ranger with a pair of binoculars counting them as they cross the beach. So it's not easy, but it keeps our data consistent, and that's actually how we realised that our penguin numbers here were dropping, was with that nightly penguin count. Seeing that decrease in penguins crossing the beach was what alerted the researchers that action needed to be taken. They were able to take that to the government to form that penguin protection plan that's ensured that we still have penguins here, and hopefully we will for many, many years to come. Hopefully in forever we'll have penguins here. And there's lots of them coming along the highway now. This is probably where we might see some nice chunky penguins. They're all looking pretty chunky actually. That's a good sign. It means there's probably lots of food nice and close. And while I try to follow these guys, do we have any more questions, Stephen? Anything else you're going to try and stump me with? I definitely wasn't ready for that Northern Hemisphere question.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I don't think I have any really difficult ones, but maybe for our newer viewers, they're wondering how fast do penguins walk on land compared to how fast do they swim in the ocean?
Ooh, we've definitely been asked a bit how fast they walk on land. And that one I don't have a concrete answer for you, but I know how fast they go in the ocean. So their fastest speed they can go in the ocean is just over 12 kilometers per hour. That's their absolute fastest, and it's faster than the fastest human Olympic swimmer, but their cruising speed is about 6 kilometers per hour when they're just out cruising, looking for food. How fast they can go on land, we're not really sure. They definitely go faster in the water, and this is their typical speed that you can see right now, just taking their time waddling along the highway. But as you might have seen when they got scared on the rocks, they can move quite fast when they get a fright. So I've definitely tried to catch a penguin, and they're really fast. So they're probably, they could probably run just a little bit slower than I can. I can definitely outrun a penguin, but they can move fast if they need to. I think Ross, our data analyst, when he was on one night, he likened the speed of a penguin on land to walking down the aisle at a wedding. So kind of that pace that you would walk down an aisle, that's the pace that the penguins kind of waddle when they're on land. But no one's really studied it. We haven't gotten a speed camera out to see how quick they go on land. I feel like maybe we should now. So many people are asking us how fast they go on land. Yeah. Maybe we can set a new penguin record on land.
Well, if any policemen want to come and visit the parade with their speed cameras, if they go as slow as maybe 1 or 2 kilometers an hour, maybe, might be able to track how fast they're moving.
Yeah. I would definitely be interested to know, but I would hope that I can outrun a penguin. I'm pretty sure that I can, because they have that funny little waddle that we all know and love, because their knees are fused together. They can't bend their knees. There we go, there's that little chick again. So when they're walking, they're just kind of leaning forward, rocking side to side, and getting a bit of momentum to move forward and keep going. But when they're in the water, that is what they are made to do. They are made to swim. Obviously, they can no longer fly. Their little wings are adapted into flippers, and they're extremely strong to get them through the water. And they're shaped like little torpedoes. They're really hydrodynamic to go really fast. Like I was saying, quicker than our quickest human Olympic swimmer to catch all of those little fish, the little schooling fish, things like sardines, anchovies. And they're quite clever. There's a few wallabies up on the hill. In the way that our penguins fish. So we're talking about the young penguins heading out to sea. No one teaches them how to find food. So when they first try and fish, they'll kind of float on the surface and they might dive down through the school of fish and try and catch them. But once they find the best method, they're usually swimming down underneath the school of fish and swimming up to catch them and catching them by surprise because they have this excellent camouflage. Completely blue on the black back, even the tops of their beaks and bottoms of their feet are dark in colour. So when they're below the fish, they're blending in with the water, just like they would when they're sitting on the surface, maybe looking for food or having a little penguin power nap. And then like little white bellies blend in with the sky if you're looking up from above. So they are just really good at being out in the ocean where they spend most of their time with their waterproof feathers, their hydrodynamic little bodies, their strong flippers and their camouflage. And these guys have quite a hike going up the hill here as well. They've slowed down quite a bit. That's definitely not penguin top speed on land. I might go over to the beach and we have only like another minute left. Maybe we'll answer one more question, Stephen.
All right. This one's from it's either Jean or Jean. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Sorry. They have a question they're trying to stump you with.
Okay.
I think you might know the answer to this one. If
I'll
not,
do
I
my
might be able to
best.
help. Do penguins experience REM sleep during those little 4-minute sleeps that they have?
So I believe they do. Yes. They have a full sleep cycle just like we would. All those different stages of sleep that we go through in 8 hours, they go through in 4 minutes. And Stephen gave me the thumbs up, so I think that's right.
That's what I've heard too. So
Yes.
I've never seen the scientific study on it, but apparently we have done that. So
Yeah, I'd be interested to see a little brain scan of the penguins as they sleep. I'm sure that would be fascinating. But yeah, a 4-minute sleep for a penguin. I said a penguin power nap, but it's really not. It's a full sleep cycle for a penguin. That little 4 minutes on land or in the water. They're able to just float on the surface. They could even sleep standing up when they're on land, but they still are going through that entire sleep cycle, which is incredible. I wish that I could do that.
I know, and I like to think that because penguins have REM sleep, they also dream when they sleep. And I always want to know, what do penguins dream about?
Probably just fish.
The fish that got away.
Oh, you reckon?
Yeah.
I was just like thinking like just a smorgasbord of fish, just like they're swimming and fish after fish. Or maybe those mum and dad penguins are dreaming about when their chicks fledge and they're not being attacked every time they come home. There you go. Put in the comments, what do you think penguins dream about? I've never really thought about it. I think that's fascinating. If only we could ask them. Look, we do our best to speak penguin, but I'm sure you've all heard our impressions. I don't think we speak fluent penguin well enough to ask them what they're dreaming about, so we can only guess. Now let's do one last zoom out. We'll see if there's any more penguins crossing the beach. What are you guys doing down there? Just hanging out. And get through your guesses. How many penguins you think have come in tonight? How many think you'll come in the next 20 minutes? Because we'll still be counting them for a little bit longer. And tune in again tomorrow night if you want to know the answer, if you want to know how many penguins we had cross the beach tonight. So if you do want to help look after our little penguins and contribute to the work that we do here at Phillip Island Nature Parks, our penguin protection, our fox eradication, which even though I said we've been fox free for over 5 years ago now, it is an ongoing mission to make sure that those foxes stay off the island. We have a camera on the bridge to monitor if any cross, and we're maintaining a buffer zone across the bridge to make sure those foxes never come back to protect our wildlife. So there's still a lot of work that goes into looking after our wildlife here on Phillip Island, and also lots we don't know. as some of your questions have shown, there's a lot more we want to know. We want to research. We want to continue learning more about our penguins, and that's where our funding goes. So if you come visit us, we would love to see your faces here at the Penguin Parade. If you can't come and visit us just yet, if you're overseas and you want to help us out with the work we do here, you can donate to the Penguin Foundation, adopt a penguin, adopt a bandicoot, any of those animals. Any little bit makes a huge difference. And I hope you just all enjoyed watching our little penguins. We love telling you about the penguins, seeing them cross every night, and seeing the joy that our penguins bring to all of you. So we hope to see you here on Live Penguin TV again tomorrow night. Stephen, shall we finish with a huck off?
Sounds great.
Alrighty, thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye. Huck, huck.